We've got some lovely pictures coming up because after being appointed the UK's Poet Laureate, Simon Armitage pledged to put the environment at the heart of his work.
True to his word, earlier this year he travelled to the Arctic to see firsthand the impact climate change is having and to write new poems in response. Let's take a listen.
When I met the glacier face to face, there was no coming together of skin and ice, just washy clouds and a weepy sky floating upside down in a silver lake, and the eyes looking up from the water were mine. It was hard slog, in a valley more like a Scottish glen, along hillsides more at home in the English lakes. A day's trek up a narrow track between harebell and birch. And to do what? To say the Arctic looks like this or looks like that. To breathe its cool breath, then scratch a name in the visitor's book and give the glacier a human form, tongue, body, mouth and heart. In any event, I was too late. Looking up from the milky pool, I saw the whiteness in retreat, the bedraggled hem of the bridal train heading into the heights, towards deeper winter and truer north, trailing a stony path. When I met the glacier face to face, there was no close encounter of ancient snow and body heat, just weepy clouds and a washy sky hanging upside down in a zinc-coloured lake, and the eyes staring out of the water were mine.
The poetry and pictures of Simon Armitage on his trip to the Arctic, and he joins us now. Good morning.
Morning.
Gosh, this was quite an adventure you've had. This is the first time you've ever been there.
Yeah, it was. It's very exciting. I'm a geography graduate and a northerner, so I've always been interested in going further in that direction.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. The north coast of Iceland was the furthest I'd got, so it was the first time inside the Arctic Circle, and it's a staggeringly beautiful place. It's like a dreamland, and I think for a lot of people, in their mind, it's more of a concept than an actual location. But very sad as well, about what's happening there. Yeah.
What did you learn? You said it was sad. So what did you learn?
I just learned that it's disappearing, and this place that we have in our minds as a constant coordinate, a fixed geographical place with all these amazing snow-covered mountains and glaciers, it's disappearing. And, the scientists are trying to tell people what's happening, but I think proof can be difficult sometimes. Facts and figures aren't always what people want to hear. So I think poetry is about persuasion, and I saw it as my job to try and come back from there with a language that persuades people to be interested and take note.
And how inspiring was that landscape, that journey as a poet?
Inspiring is the right word. We think of it as a romantic word, but you cannot help be moved by the place, the tranquility. It's very difficult to get your coordinates there. There are no buildings as such, so you don't know whether you are a giant or a mouse in that place. But as soon as I got there, I started collecting language and ideas. I was out with the scientists most days. There was just so much to write about and quite a lot of time to do it, as well as making the Radio 4 programmes.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because you actually had the time to think. How much pressure did you feel? Does that give you more pressure, maybe?
I've always said that, poetry is the art form of concentration, and, it's our obligation not to say the first thing that comes into our heads. But I wanted to write the poems there because I wanted them recorded in situ and to be, part of the acoustic of the Arctic. So, yeah, I jumped straight in and got on with it.
And did you find a specific space, I don't know, your cabin or your sleeping bag where you would do the writing?
Yeah, I was at the UK Arctic Research Station, and you can't do a lot there because you can't really go wandering around because of the problem of the bears.
Yeah.
The place where I find to write is in my head, but it was 24-hour sunlight, and it was 11 degrees all the time, and that...
11 degrees?
11 degrees, which, so the whole place was just drip, drip, drip. But, yeah, I didn't have to go to bed. I could stay up and carry on writing.
And how do you now spread the word. How do you pass the message on? How do you make sure that people hear the poems?
Well, through the publication of the work, as laureate, you get an opportunity to, a platform maybe that other poets don't always get. I try and think of poetry as, an art form of persuasion. So the scientists, when they were talking about the glaciers being ill and sick, I think they even thought that they were slightly going beyond their remit, but I describe them as carcasses. And I think when you use language like that, people tend to listen. They listen to metaphors in a way that they don't often listen to, information. So
I know my kids have studied your poetry, and lots of kids will, as part of the GCSE syllabus, and they'll be really familiar.
And they're getting increasingly older as well when I meet them. So.
Well, my kids, yeah. But in terms of being able to reach young people particularly with a message about the environment through poetry, how important is that?
It's really important, and actually poetry has undergone something of a renaissance this last 10 years. It's incredibly popular with young people. It's a very democratic art form. You don't need much to get on with it. Pencil, paper, keyboard, whatever. If you go to a lot of festivals now, there'll be a poetry tent, a literature tent, and a lot of young people are making poetry, involved with poetry, whether it shades into songwriting and other art forms. So, and being on the the GCSE syllabus for 25 years or something, it's an incredible opportunity to put work in front of younger people.
And how important, we talked about young people, how important is it that actually older people get the message too?
True.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this stuff is so important, and I know it can be gloomy, but the heat that I was feeling there is the same heat that you're seeing in the fires on the moors, and the melt that I was seeing there is the same water ultimately that is coming down the valleys, that is flooding people. So it is unignorable, and the world and the planet as we think about it, it really doesn't exist anymore except in pockets and patches, and I feel as if it's my job and poetry's job, which has always had this strong relationship with nature, to tell that story.
Well, thanks for coming in this morning and hearing your poetry, but telling us your story. Thank you so much, Simon. And you can listen to Poet Laureate in the Arctic every Tuesday on BBC Radio 4, and that will be on BBC Sounds too.